Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome to the 90th level of the RPG Cave. I am one of your hosts, the level 99 human Archmage Ryan Turford, and I am joined, as always, by the level 99 elf medic, Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing in this lovely, lovely Monday evening? Good sir, I have to put emphasis on the Monday because we kind of just wrapped around again to being back on Monday again.
We're back on Monday, trying to cheer up your Mondays, your Monday nights / Tuesdays or Wednesdays or whenever you listen to this podcast. I'm doing good. It's definitely a Monday.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's talk about the weather. It is very nice weather in San Francisco now.
I mean, the best part is, Garret, it's the weather is actually kind of nice here too. It's 12 degrees Celsius right now outside.
I don't understand that. No.
I mean that's like a nice 60 to 70 degrees.
Oh yeah,
somewhere in that range. Like it's pretty good for nighttime weather in Canada. It's things are turning around a little bit here in Canada. Of course, Sean very excited about the fact that we're talking about the weather, so I almost feel like we should double down at least a little.
As always.
Yeah, you definitely tell spring's here, Garret. Spring's here. Things are
spring
happening.
Is finally here after some time now.
Good God. Yeah. I don't know what Garret being a scientist has anything to do with Garret not talking about the weather. Anyways, let's clear the dungeon of these pesky mobs so we can get to the raid boss that much quicker. So folks at home, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. If you're watching the live stream right meow over at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, or if you're watching the video on demand later, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and then ding, 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 ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we go live or whenever we put up new videos, including a video that I am putting up tomorrow morning that I literally just filmed right before we actually just recorded this, that I'm gonna edit tonight. It'll be going out tomorrow. It's very exciting, Garret. It's very exciting. Also,
very exciting.
If you're listening on audio feeds, don't forget to subscribe to us there if you haven't subscribed already, or rate us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it helps the show get discovered because we want more people to come on in here and get in that conversation that we had tonight about Dragon Quest in the Discord. We need more people in on that kind of thing. We'll get to that in just a second. And then also, if you want this audio a little bit early, or any of our other podcasts a little bit early, or some exclusive content, you can head on over to our Patreon, patreon.com/carpoolgaming. Throw a little tip in the little tip jar, and out comes content. Well, without further ado, well, what's going on?
Before we get into this,
what's up?
Sean says I'm a scientist, so I should understand the metric system. This is an interesting reason, and I want to dig into this just a couple minutes. Sean, I understand in scientific problems. I know 100 degrees is boiling water. I know 0 degrees is freezing water. That's all I really know. When you say 12 degrees Celsius out in the open, I have no idea what you're talking about. That could be 200 degrees Fahrenheit in my head. It could be 20 degrees Fahrenheit in my head. It's just, I don't know what's with the Fahrenheit, man. It really messes up your mind, though.
Well, especially because the numbers aren't proportionate in any way. That's the difference. That's why it's so weird. Because that's why 12 degrees Celsius is not in a very it doesn't even out into the way that Fahrenheit really works.
Well, the Fahrenheit goes down to to tens and then goes up to hundreds and human habitable temperature. I say 100 degrees Fahrenheit, it's that's super high, but I've been there. I've been in 10-degree Fahrenheit weather. Anyways, all right, we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
You're done with the rant, Garret? Also, I want to say a huge shout out because I forgot to write this down, but I was reminded while you were doing your impassionate speech about Fahrenheit versus Celsius that we actually have some new patrons. And I want to give, a couple patron shout outs, of course. We're going to say a shout out to Mustafa Ahmed for joining us at the $3 level. And then we're also going to say thank you to Sumit Roy for joining us at the $5 level on Patreon. So huge shout out to our patrons. Of course, the show wouldn't be here or happening without them. Of course, so huge thank you to them for making the show possible. Now, Garret, before we get into Creative Business Unit 2, which is tonight's topic, before we read from the sacred text, do we also want to address what happened in the Discord tonight where I posted questions and people had a lot to say about Dragon Quest tonight?
Yo, dude, I just caught up with the Discord channel and everyone's blowing up about this. I didn't know it was such a controversy about this choosing this to we were talking about topics to do for the next week, and I was like, hey, we should do a publisher. I was checking in, and it's like, oh, what have we not done? Oh, we haven't tried Square Enix, and there's so many Square Enix type of the structure is kind of crazy, so let's just choose one. And I chose one, and now everyone has an opinion, apparently, one way or the other. Like, there's no middle ground in this one, so pretty interesting. We just caught the channel on fire, basically, Ryan.
A little bit, but also it was good. It was cool actually getting to see like everyone's point of view about Dragon Quest 11 as an example, because that was really the game that came up that kind of spurred on this conversation, and kind of getting to hear kind of people's arguments one side or the other. Like it was super cool actually. Like the main reason I also wanted to kind of shout it out on the show as well, and point to that being a thing is I just love the fact that we have such an engaged Discord that likes to talk about RPGs, which is something I never thought would happen. When we first started the show, like I thought maybe we might have like 5 or 10 people listen to us, and no one wanted to come talk to us about RPGs or be super nerdy with us, which, don't get me wrong, happened for the first while with the show. Like it definitely took some time to pick up on that. But it was still like super cool. Getting a chance to go in the Discord and seeing everyone kind of get fired up about RPGs tonight, and even just over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of great conversations in there. I think so. I just huge shout out again to everyone who comes on the Discord, who comes and says hello. And if you're listening to this or watching the video and you haven't joined our Discord, first of all, it's free to join. Anyone can join it. But the link is in the description of this video or in the podcast feed. You can just click on it and just hop on in the Discord with us. We have a lot of like friendly conversations. I know Garrett's mostly in it more than I am, but it's still always super cool to see all the happenings that are happening in the Discord. Well, Garrett, I think we've kept people waiting long enough. It is time to read from the sacred texts, because we got to talk about Creative Business Unit 2, the most original sounding name ever. From Square Enix. Of course, Square Enix, that's kind of the way that they name their studios. Like they'll have like teams within the subsection of the creative business units that will actually have like normal studio names, but otherwise like Square Enix is comprised of like Creative Business Unit 1, Creative Business Unit 2, and so on and so forth as you kind of go through it. And that's kind of how the organization works at Square Enix. But I'm taking up the microphone too much, Garrett, because you actually are taking the lead on tonight's conversation, my friend. So start us off.
I did search stuff up. Yes. I have a bunch of documents here. I have a report for everyone. I'm going to submit it to Sean, Capri, and you. Hopefully I get a good grade on this.
I thought for a second you were going to like unfurl all the paper that you have on your desk like a news reporter and like stack it on the table like a news reporter. Yeah.
Actually, I don't use that much paper anymore, thank goodness, because I don't have a printer and just everything's online now. It's actually super great. So
it's really interesting. Again, another side tangent real quick. So for people who might know this about me, I actually work for like a television news company at my day-to-day job, and it's always interesting when you're working on the news shows and actually getting a chance to see how the reporters, or not the reporters, like the on-air anchors actually organize all their notes, because a lot of times what ends up happening is they actually bring like a pile of paper, and some of them will like stack the paper like around them in like a circle in the order like all of the stories are coming up on it, and they'll like scroll through the notes and stuff like that, while others will like read through it, and then like during the commercial breaks they'll like throw it over their shoulder on the ground and stuff like that. Like it's awesome. Always interesting to see the technique of reading the news anchor technique of reading off the piece of paper. But anyways, side tangent over, Garrett. You just made me think
another side tangent. Another occupation with a lot of papers: professors. They have books literally just stacked on walls. They have paper. I can't make way of their desks because there's like at least 17 stacks. At least half of it is just papers ready to be graded. It's like, my goodness, that's another occupation with a lot of papers that I'm glad I'm not getting into. Yeah. Anyways, side tangent over.
Yeah.
We're back. Okay, so Square Enix, as Ryan said, has a lot of different. It's very weird how they're structured. Well, not weird. It's probably more business oriented than anything. It's probably very well organized for them. But in terms of just like in gaming industry and gaming studios, it's very complex. Actually, they like to intertwine with each other. They like to hire outside contractors to work on their IP. And then, so fun fact, back in 2019, I'm sure Ryan and a lot of people know this, they used to have business divisions, and there's like 10 of them. There was 11 like closer to the end of it, and then they merged all of those 11 business divisions into 3 units. Is that correct, Ryan? Three
Yeah, like
units?
3
Yeah.
creative business units. So instead of being business units, 11 business units, they became 3 creative business units.
Yes. And so what we're gonna talk so yeah, we'll probably talk about the other two later on for sure. But we're gonna focus on creative business unit 2, which is actually the merging of 3 separate divisions. That's business division 6, 7, and 11. And so I'll probably just diving into like what are the important people in this division, what are their games and series, and then what kind of outside developers that they kind of contract and kind of help with. So, you ready to take this ride with me, Ryan?
I'm ready to go down the road. I'm actually like, I'm here over here just sipping my water. I'm ready to go on the ride with you, Garret. I'm ready for you to regale me the tale of Creative's Business Unit 2 and to go on this journey with you. It's gonna be fun.
Yes. I think it's actually kind of best to like break it down to their divisions because that's really their bread and butter. That was their history. It's only recently that they kind of merged in, forming new games and collaborations into a unit, but mostly they've been pretty separate. So let's first off with Business Division 6. I think this one is the most known. And actually the leader of this business division, Yu Miyake, is actually the manager of now Business Creative Unit 2. And this division is definitely known for the most legendary series for Square Enix, the Dragon Quest series, including all the side games. They contract to outside developers. So yeah, any Dragon Quest and Dragon Warrior, and there you go. Ryan's holding up the original Dragon Warrior on the NES.
I just happen to have it at the bottom of my shelf, just right there, Garret, just waiting for me. From a different video. Again, you'll see that video tomorrow.
Definitely. And so for people who don't know, a good resource to look at developers, games is actually Moby Games. And so I kind of looked into some of the profiles of like the important people there. And of course, Yu Miyake, he is now more definitely a business and producer type of role, but he goes all the way back to Dragon Quest V, with the Square Enix studios. He actually worked on Diablo 3 localization, which was interesting.
Yeah.
He had some various different side projects. Now he just takes more of a business side role of things. His most recent ones, of course, is with Voice of Cards, is actually the mini card game series that's actually probably just, developed within the unit. Babylon's Fall, which is Platinum Games' failure at launch.
The masterpiece, Babylon's Fall, that, just got delisted not too long ago.
Rough. Very rough.
God, I can't believe that game actually came out this year. I forgot that that's a thing.
It came out last year. It delisted this year. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It was 1 year. They had some content and they just threw it away. But yeah, he's been in the business for a while and with Square Enix for a long time. It's definitely since Dragon Quest V or even Dragon Warrior 3 and some ports and stuff. He worked on Nier Replicant as well. So that's Business Division 6. I think so they do the Dragon Quest series, but they also do, collaborate with the Nier series as well.
Yeah.
So you got Nier Replicant, which is the most recent remaster in 2020 or 2019, something like that. Developed by Toy Logic. So I think Nier series, they've been doing outside developers, right? So they've been with Nier Replicant and Nier Automata with the Platinum Games.
Yeah, the idea is like they want to make sure that the lore standards and the game standards are kind of the same across the board, like it feels like a Nier game. And I think a lot of that comes with like from the Square Enix side of getting involved with Platinum or Toy Logic or whoever's kind of the developer. So that's I think that's their main role, is to make sure that the game that they're developing it fits within the Nier universe and has the Nier feel and things like that. Like I think that's why they act more as that's how they act more in the support studio role when those games.
Yeah. And I mean, that's all really pretty much it about Business Division 6. Now they're folding into, with Creative Business Unit 2, and we'll talk about their future games later in this Fun Facts episode. They are definitely working hard on Dragon Quest 12. All right, so next up, Business Division 7. And Lord Ryan, when I looked this division up, this was definitely one of the ones that I would never know about.
Yeah, for good reason.
Yes, for good reason. So their leader in Business Division 7, now folded in, was Takamasa Shiba. And so he was actually in Division 4 beforehand. Well, let me see if I can pull his Moby games up. His most recent stuff was Dragon Guard 3, which is on the PlayStation 3 in 2013. But other than that, I guess his role is definitely more on the business side than a developer side,
Right.
For Division 7. So what Division 7 does is, like, it looks like a lot of different just mobile games and or arcade games. Most notably in Japan, the Lord of Vermilion series. Their most recent one, Lord of Vermilion 4, developed by Think Garage. Now, Ryan, have you seen this game before?
Oh, I've
At
seen the
all?
Lord of Vermilion games before, Garret, because that's an old
Oh,
series,
really?
old, very very old school game series. But it is like like the new Lord of Vermilion games are very anime style, and
Very
they're
anime.
yeah, and there's even like an anime series based off Lord of Vermilion as well, which is a
Yes.
thing.
So the most recent one, actually, that's in the arcades right now is a card-based arcade game,
Yeah,
if you believe it or not. So you have to have physical cards to put on the little podium or whatever in front of this arcade cabinet, and it actually comes to life
yeah.
in this arcade machine video game. I've never seen like that before
Well, they're
until I
trying to
searched
make
this.
trying to emulate Yu-Gi-Oh, Garret. That's what they're trying to do. They want the
Hey,
monster of the or do you remember the Eye of Judgment on PlayStation 3 with the PlayStation camera, where it was almost like an AR game where you pointed the PlayStation
mhm.
camera at like a board with all the cards, and as you flipped at the cards, it read the cards, and then it kind of displayed the monsters out of the cards in AR.
I did not know that. That's kind of cool, actually.
It never
Okay.
worked properly, but it was certainly a game that existed.
They should do something with PSVR too, just like a Lord of Vermilion,
I'm
like
actually kind of surprised they
card-alike
haven't.
game.
Like, there isn't virtual card games in VR that are like that, which is just you
Yeah,
think that that's something that they would do. Like,
I
Konami,
would
get
be
on that
totally down.
Yu-Gi-Oh Duel Links. Make that a
No,
VR
I
game.
would be so down. Like if they had a Yu-Gi-Oh video game in PSVR 2, I'd be like, I don't know, I might need to grab that.
Yeah.
But they have other smaller games, but honestly, when I was reading through the list,
Yeah.
Ryan, I just didn't know these existed beforehand.
Yeah, most of them are just, again, mobile games or Japan only releases.
Yeah.
So that they're not. That's why it's not a studio that most normal North American people would be super familiar with,
Right.
because again, we really just didn't get these releases in North America at all. Or if we did, it was again only phone versions of them, because there were also PC versions of some of these games as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of smart to, like, if like what divisions are kind of smaller, or porting other things. If they need support in, like, within a unit or work closely within other divisions, it was probably kind of smart to be like, merge in with the bigger one, like the Dragon Quest series folks.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of makes sense. Um, so yeah, other than that. Well, I'm just checking up my list here. Yeah, they had just smaller mobile games developed by Cygames, Dragon Quest Monsters Super Light, Figureheads by Silicon Studio, the people who made Bravely Default, which
Yeah.
we'll talk about later. Yeah, so pretty small, but maybe we'll get a Lord of Vermilion game on PlayStation and PSVR.
Maybe a Lord of Vermilion PSVR game at some point, Garret.
That would be so cool.
That would actually be pretty cool. I would actually play that probably.
Yeah, me too. Like if that was actually available. But I think the last one is really what I drew, like, really towards it, and I think I play the most games from the studio. That's Business Division 11. And they're really known for the start, or really the birth, of the HT 2D art games. along with other, developers around there.
Mhm.
And also Bravely Default, which is like kind of like more of their original stuff. I think they're, hold on, I'm just checking. I am checking my notes here. There's so much stuff with Square
I
Enix.
mean, to be fair, it is kind of a big confusing mess to kind of go through. But yeah, it's like because they work with other studios to kind of develop the
Yes.
Bravely games and Octopath Traveler with Team Asano. But they like very much were kind of overseeing the production of those was kind of the idea behind
Yes.
it.
I think their leader was Tomoya Asano. They don't have that in writing anywhere. So
Yeah.
I just, keep it with a grain of salt. But yeah, definitely. So as Ryan said, they worked with a lot of different studios and developers that, and they kind of just managed up top, making sure it's like, published through Square Enix. And I think Team Asano did a pretty good job of directing these games. But yeah, let me just go through the list real quick for you. Bravely Default 1, developed by Silicon Studio.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bravely Default 2, developed by Claytek Works. So Claytek Works was actually kind of the successor of Silicon Studio.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just this mini studio developer. And their website is actually kind of cool. It's like trying to be all artistic and
Oh,
like well technology is like, hey, we like to blend art and technology and like this creative type of stuff, and converting it to English was pretty interesting too. It was a very nice website.
nice.
um Octopath Traveler, of course, in 2018, and that was developed by Acquire.
Mm-hmm.
um and then we got Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent. That was the mobile game
Yeah, the one
that
that's
came out
still
under
going
them,
strong. People seem to like that game.
apparently. um Octopath Traveler 2, which recently came out, developed by Acquire, of course, and now it's part of Creative Business Unit 2. You got Triangle Strategy, developed by Ardink Corporation and Tomoya Asano. And then you also got Live Alive, also developed by Claytek Works. So as you can tell, they are really digging into the HD2D art now. And then also with the Bravely Default series.
Yeah.
I like this division a lot,
Yeah,
actually.
like they're really trying again, like their whole MO is trying to find the right developers to handle the 2D HD2D stuff and then assigning them like specific projects. That's why we're seeing so many HD2D
Yes.
games come out, because it's not so much that they are so quick to make. It's the opposite. It takes a while to make these games, but it's just when you have so many companies like where you have Creative Business Unit 2 kind of overseeing the entire production of those games
Mhm.
and then handing them off to the right developers to kind of develop them all in tandem with each other. I think that's why that strategy kind of works. It's also why we have another one that's coming out pretty soon, or at least we don't know when it's coming. We don't have an exact release date, but that Dragon Quest 3 remake is coming out at some point,
Yes.
which I know you're going to talk about in the future list. So, yeah, I think that's kind of the idea of the 2D HD2D games, where they're not like trying to keep them in one place. They're trying to divide them out where that makes sense, anyways.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I guess, yeah, of course, Tomoya Asano, he's the head guy over there. He knows what to do. Of course, we know Team Asano over there. They help out a lot with all of those games and develop some as well. Another major person within this division is actually Yosuke Saito. And he does pretty much everything in Division 6. He executive producer of Voice of Cards. He was a producer of Babylon's Fall, producer of Nier Replicant, Nier Automata, Dragon Quest 11. So you'll see that guy definitely involved with future projects within Division 6 within Creative Business Unit 2. But yeah, man, that's pretty much all that there is. And really digging into this information, I didn't realize how like corporate structure Square
Yeah.
Enix is. It's very Morse core. I like it. It's about as hard to like decipher compared to like Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nintendo is like pretty much structured like that as well. They had got some generic names in there, but they also have some studios that they kind of have second party relationships, but not. And then of course with the Pokemon Company is like totally unique. So yeah, this was interesting digging through all the information. This is what I grabbed.
It also is, but at the same time, also when you look at it, it also makes Square Enix feel more like a big house of indie companies in a lot of way, or a company that doesn't make a lot of their own stuff, where a lot of the Square Enix stuff that we see, especially from Creative Business Unit 2 in particular, is a lot of stuff that's outsourced to other studios while they provide kind of the oversight and the direction for those games, like the HT2D games or the Bravely series, even something like Dragon Quest. I think the only Dragon Quest game that we're gonna talk about in future games, like there's only one that's developed in house, and the rest are, kind of given to other companies to work on. Yeah, it's very different from when you look at Creative Business Unit 3 and 1, which I'm sure we'll get to in future episodes, especially Creative Business Unit 3, which Ryan Turford probably wants to talk about at some point.
Of course.
But I think that when you look at the other ones, like I think that's when you start to get into more of the in-house Square Enix developed content. Because for example, Final Fantasy 16, as an example, being developed at Creative Business Unit 3 is developed entirely at Square Enix. Like it's not like in-house in Business Unit 3. Like it's not, send off to a bunch of other places. Of course, they're still working with support studios like any other company would, but it's very different from what's happening here, where Square Enix is almost acting like Creative Business Unit 2 is almost acting as the support studio for other companies.
Yeah, definitely agree. There's a lot of collaboration involved within this unit. As I said before, Claytech Works, Acquire, Artink Corporation, Platinum Games, Toy Logic, Think Garage. All these different companies are just, they're developing it, but yeah, as Ryan said, they're the producers, they're the business side. They try to make sure the projects get ended and they're true to the IP. I'm actually pretty excited what future projects that they're gonna do, like within collaborations with each other, what other games that they can think of that's not like as separate as they were beforehand. Like there's a reason why they merged together. So let's see what kind of projects that they do. Yeah.
And there's some interesting stuff coming up, which I'm sure is a nice segue, Garrett, to what's kind of on the hot plate for Creative Business Unit 2. Like where are they going? What is the path forward for them?
So as we alluded to, there are two big games that were announced that are in development that is cooking over at Creative Business Unit 2. The first one, of course, is I feel like the most controversial game I've heard within our Discord channel, and that is Dragon Quest 12. And it's funny because we have zero gameplay of this game.
We have a logo.
We have a logo, and we had apparently a modification of that logo within the past week. But hearing from the interviews about this game, it's gonna be different than the previous ones. It's gonna be a little bit more modern. It's gonna try to appeal more on the action-based folks than what they're traditionally known for in the Dragon Quest series. And I think a lot of people, especially within our channel, you either really like Dragon Quest or you don't. It's really because it's a classic gameplay. It's a classic story. And then like Dragon Quest 11 is a little long in the tooth, and that's why, it gets run down a lot. But if you really, you could play it on the classic version, right? The top-down version of it, it is no different than Dragon Warrior or the original Dragon Quest games. So I'm pretty interested how they're going to play out Dragon Quest 12, because I feel like it's going to be pretty different than what we've seen before. And I wonder what kind of influence, especially with Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Final Fantasy 16's going in that direction. What's Dragon Quest 12 gonna do?
Well, not only that, but you're also seeing that from all the other Square Enix games that were, that came back that were turn-based games before. Like Valkyrie Elysium is like the perfect example I have for that, where that's always been a turn-based series, and this newest iteration is also an action game. Like it's like that's just that's the style they're going for now with most of their games, especially their major series. Anything that's minor, they still, of course, have the turn-based games when it comes to the HT2D stuff, the Bravely stuff with Bravely Default 2, and of course, other games they have that are turn-based. But for the most part, they are trying to go in that action direction with their biggest series. Which again, it makes sense because as a big corporation, as a very corporate company, as you kind of alluded to, Garrett, like they want to chase the dollar signs. So if the dollar signs say that they need to make their games more actiony, then that's the direction they're going to go in, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm wondering, so I have a question for you. Do you think sometime this year we'll get any kind of gameplay of Dragon Quest 12?
No, not at all. I don't think that game's coming out until 2025 at this point. So they will show it probably at late next year, like maybe Game Awards time next year is what I'm but we don't even have platforms for this game. So like, I don't even know.
Do not.
So it's like, is it coming to Switch? Is it coming to PlayStation exclusively like Dragon Quest 11 did to start off with? Is it like, what's happening with this? Like, where is this going? Cause that'll also probably influence when we see that game as well throughout the year. Cause obviously, if it is coming to Switch, like, we'll probably see it during a Nintendo Direct next year. But yeah, that's getting off base from what you asked, where it's just like, yeah, I personally I'm not getting the read that that's anytime soon. I'm guessing 2025 at the earliest, but I actually think it might even be later than that at this point. Because I do think ultimately, like, the other game that's in development that I'm going to let you get to, I think that's the one that's going to tide the fans over with until the next one comes, until Dragon Quest 12 comes out. I think that's kind of the strategy here.
Yeah. I hope we get something a little bit out more this year, because they just have an announcement, they just have a logo with this game, and just some interviews as they say it's gonna be a little different. I'm just like, okay, how different is it gonna be? But yeah,
but also,
I
like,
totally agree.
I was gonna, and I will say that I just personally also would prefer them to wait on it until they're ready to talk about it, because like, there's nothing worse than them showing us a little bit of it now and then it's not out for 2 or 3 more years, right? Like, I don't think that actually helps the cause. I actually think it might hurt the cause a little bit more, which is why I am hoping that what they decide to do with this is wait until at least a year, like no longer than a year before it comes out, before they should start showing that game.
Got it. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So the next game we'll get into, and I think both of us are very excited for this one. That is Dragon Quest 3 HD remake, right? Dragon Quest 3? Okay.
Yeah, Dragon Quest 3.
It's been a while since we've seen anything. Like last year, nothing. Yeah. This year, nothing so far. But the original opening and the announcement, I think, really excited us, because it follows that HD 2D trademark that they have now with Live Alive, Triangle Strategy, Octopath Traveler, now doing it with a legacy Dragon Quest series. And I'm glad that they're going to 3, because I hear it's like really the more popular ones. So yeah, I wonder when this game will come out. I'm sure we'll get gameplay. I hope this year.
Yeah. I think that is what the one you see this year. Even if it doesn't end up coming out this year, I think at the very least we will see it at a Nintendo Direct this year. I think actually probably the fall Direct, or like the Direct before the end of the year. I think that's when we see Dragon Quest 3. Like, because I think maybe that's like, because they tend to release at least one of the HD 2D games every single year in like that February to April kind of window every year. And that's where I think maybe that's where this fits in, is like somewhere between February and April of 2024 is when this comes out. So I in which case we would see it before the end of the year, I think.
Cool. That sounds good, man. Yeah, I cannot wait for this. Actually, I picked this in my Fantasy Critic league last year, thinking it would come out last year, but I dropped it pretty suddenly because of it. But yeah, they say the news is coming soon as of December 2022. I don't know what that means.
Just in soon in quotations. Square, again, you have to understand, Garrett. Square Enix soon does not mean anytime soon. It does not mean the same length of time as any other company out there. They're kind of like Blizzard in that way, where they'll kind of tell you about it when it's done, when it's ready, or when it's done. Like I think they really learned from their mistakes anyways with both Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 15, where they showed those games that were just way too early, And those were like 10 years between the release time to when they actually came out. So I think that what I've been noticing from Square Enix lately is they don't like to talk about games too early. Again, the main reason why I think they announced the 2 Dragon Quest games when they did was just because they were celebrating the anniversary of Dragon Quest at the time, and like shareholders were asking about it. So I think it was more of a play for shareholders at the time. But I remember during that presentation, because it was like a video live stream kind of thing, they're like, yeah, these games are really far away and we'll just tell you about them when they're when we're ready to talk about them. So it's just like I wasn't expecting anything for that, especially 12, where they specifically said during that presentation that that's a very long ways away. Like they said that themselves. So that's part of the reason. That's also, again, going back to why I don't think that's an announcement this year. It's for that reason, because they just seemed very adamant when they announced it that that's at least like 4 or 5 years away from when they announced it. They said.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we also saw gameplay of Dragon Quest III HD remake. We saw a battle scene, we saw art, we saw a video,
and they even released screenshots afterwards as well. So we got those too. But
so I think it's only a matter of time. Last year, we had 2 HD, not 2 like 2D HD art games. We got Live Alive, and we also Triangle Strategy.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that Dragon Quest III HD remake, I can see that being a fall game, for them. Square Enix likes to pump out, 20 games in the fall. So.
There is that, like especially after last year, where they released like 7 games in 3 months, and it's just like, what are you doing? Even me, who's really into this stuff, can't play all these games because there just isn't physically enough time to do that. Like again, that's why I hope this game really gets the space it kind of deserves too, because I just don't think that they need it this fall, because I think between Final Fantasy 16 and I know they have other things on their plate this fall. That they haven't even talked too much about yet, that aren't that Dragon Quest. I feel like that's why they kind of like, this isn't the time probably to release that, or they don't need to anyways. They can, sure, but I think it might actually get lost in the shuffle this fall more than anything, which is not what you want.
I got a few one question for you. All right, future games, Dragon Quest 12. What are the platforms?
I think it's PlayStation 5 exclusive.
I would do that, and I would do Steam.
Yeah,
I think it would be PS5.
Well, it's probably again, like when I say PlayStation 5 exclusive, I mean timed exclusive with PC, just like Final Fantasy 7 remake. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because Dragon Quest 11 was eventually all platforms, but originally a PlayStation exclusive. So. But man, we see Square Enix now not putting anything on the Xbox platform.
Yeah. Not only that too, but I just feel like this game going in the action direction will probably be too high spec for something like Switch. Like, again, the main reason why Dragon Quest 11 works on Switch is, again, it's a cell shaded game. It's very slow paced, so it doesn't matter what the frame rate is. With Dragon Quest 11, which is why 30 frames was totally fine with it. But if they're going in the action game direction, like Final Fantasy 16, then I'm expecting big, like big graphic set pieces running at as close to 60 frames per second as possible. Like, I think that's the direction they're kind of going in with this, which is why I think it's not probably going to be on Switch, especially because by the time it comes out, maybe, if the Switch 2 is powerful enough to run it, because the Switch 2, I would assume, is out by the time that this is out. Whatever the Switch 2 looks like. I'm assuming by 2025, when this actually comes out, Switch 2 is out, or there's a thing, right? So if that's the case, then the game might run on Switch 2, but that's why I'm pretty sure it's just going to be PlayStation exclusive. Because I don't think there's any way this comes to Xbox again. Because I think Square Enix, in a lot of ways, with the Japan stuff, is kind of done with Xbox, which makes me sad.
Yeah.
As someone who does an Xbox podcast and who likes Square Enix games, I think they're done with Xbox at this point.
I mean, it was so weird to see them really push for the Game Pass stuff, and of course, the Xbox wasn't, Well,
they got they down. In fairness, they did accept the bags with the dollar signs on them for that to happen, of course.
So I'm curious if Xbox would go back to the well with Dragon Quest, but at this point, they got other Japanese games they can focus on other than Square Enix. So I agree with you. Xbox probably not on the table now,
Yeah.
or thinking about it.
Yeah, and it really just
But
depends
yeah.
on how powerful Switch 2 is, right? Like if Switch 2 is
Hmm.
powerful enough, I'm sure they will make a version to work on it, but it's just a matter of how powerful is that platform.
Hmm.
I think that's going to factor into the decision as to whether or not it ends up there. Because obviously like Japanese developers want their games on Nintendo platforms, given how
Yeah.
popular their consoles are in Japan. So it's just a matter of will it actually run on the console more than anything.
I do have the Japanese version of Dragon Quest 11 on my 3DS. Yes, they will force any type of video game onto a platform, no matter what the technology is, into that Nintendo platform.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
you
especially
know,
Dragon Quest 2 specifically as a franchise is very much, aligned with Nintendo in a lot of ways, where, the series started
mhm.
on Nintendo platforms. Every Dragon Quest game has been on Nintendo platforms, so it makes sense for it, Dragon Quest 12 to be there if it can physically run on the Switch. But you never know.
Yes.
They're getting Hogwarts Legacy to run on Switch somehow, Garrett. So, I mean, who's to stop this game from running on Switch at this point?
Goodness gracious. Yeah. So Dragon Quest 3 HD is definitely definitely on Switch. I'm wondering, did they say Switch exclusive? I don't think they said Switch
No, I
exclusive.
think that was a, again, they didn't
That
announce
was just an
platforms either, but they said the demonstration was on Switch hardware, like
got
the
it.
trailer.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's
No,
all we
I
know.
can't wait for
Yeah.
that. Hmm.
But
Um, of-
so then question for you, Garrett, while we're on this
yeah.
topic then.
Hmm.
That's what we know about.
Hmm.
What do you think we don't know about that they're working on? Like what like you throw your thinking cap on. What do you think, what else do you think that they're working on besides this stuff? Besides Dragon
They're
Quest?
definitely working on that Lord of Vermilion PSVR game that we talked about just now, of course.
Yeah.
Other than that, you know, I'm I was pleasantly surprised about how they turned the table with Octopath Traveler. That game, the first game did not wow me. It did not wow you, and it kind of just went everywhere after the Switch exclusivity deal. And then you got Octopath Traveler 2 coming out multi-platform, PlayStation, Switch, PC, and it's doing bangers. Um, they announced it like very late last year, and it just popped up like out of nowhere. I think obviously after the success of Traveler 2, critically, I think they're going for a Traveler 3.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm just not sure how big of a scope it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be still with Acquire. So I think Acquire is still gonna chase after that third game
Yeah.
with Octopath Traveler.
Like they
That
may
makes
as well
sense
make
to
that
me.
a trilogy. That makes a lot of sense, despite the
Mhm.
fact that the games don't really, intertwine or anything.
Yeah, yeah. So I can see that. I can see Crytek Works still being involved with um with the studios over there. Now that they remade Live Alive, I think they're gonna switch over from the Bravely Default 3D art style to a 2D HD art style. I think they're just gonna make a brand new RPG, or in the works with Square Enix, and I
Mhm.
think it's just gonna be more in line. It's gonna be hard because they shouldn't be so relatable or close to Octopath Traveler. So I'm wondering what they're gonna do actually. I know Claytech Works probably is still, involving with some project with Square Enix. I just don't know what
Yeah.
that would be. Yeah.
It could be anything at
So
this point. Like I actually think there's actually a possibility that at some point, kind of like what they're doing with Dragon Quest, there's a possibility that we get a Final Fantasy spin-off of some kind in the HD
mhm.
2D engine as well. Like I think that is an
Oh
idea
yeah.
that I can't believe that they haven't done yet. Like they haven't done like a Final Fantasy side game in HD 2D that is like with the Final Fantasy motifs, but isn't like a numbered entry in Final Fantasy. Like I think that would really satisfy like old school fans of Final Fantasy. And I think the name recognition would get people to, interested in playing something like that more than a lot of their other HD 2D releases. Because one of the things we've kind of learned about them as well, they don't sell very well. Like especially
No, they
Octopath Traveler
don't.
2, I know sales have been pretty soft on it from what we've been hearing. So it's just one of those things where I think like doing something like that would be like a major boost to maybe sales of those type of games, is maybe if they attach like do like a Final Fantasy HD 2D game. Or I think the Dragon Quest 3 thing is going to help as well, like bringing people in, more people in to that, because it's Dragon Quest. Like people will buy that game specifically because it's just called Dragon Quest, Garrett, not even knowing anything about the game at all. They'll buy it because it's Dragon Quest at that point.
Well, let me tell you, Ryan, I am curious if they would make an action-y style HD 2D game, like it's all been really turn-based and tactical-based with these games. I'm curious if they would do an action-based RPG in this style.
Like what if they did one of the Mana games? Like a new Mana game in HD 2D. Yeah. That's one of the franchise I thought about that they could expand it to, but I don't know obviously we don't know the limitations of the HD 2D engine, whether it can't support action stuff, like if it can only support turn-based combat for whatever reason. Because I think that would be like super interesting, maybe seeing what an action RPG would look like in HD 2D. Like I'm not opposed to that idea, despite the fact that I love, turn-based games more than action-based RPGs. Like I think like that would be a great way to bring back a series like that. Bring back, the Mana series and do like an action RPG in that style. I think would be really interesting.
I also think Triangle Strategy can come back.
Yeah.
With Tomoya Asano and it's crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I know people know that Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy, they're very close in like art style or whatever, but they're different developers for this game. So I can totally see a sequel to Triangle Strategy being in the works with Art Inc. Corporation. I think that would be like the next, that would be the next year game. That would be 2024 game.
In fact,
easily.
Garrett, if I was the betting man, I actually think that Triangle Strategy 2 is actually more likely than Octopath Traveler 3 based on the way those games have sold. I actually think, from the business point of view of Square Enix, I actually think that they probably look at Triangle Strategy as a bigger success than Octopath Traveler 2. So I think they're more likely to make sure that there's a sequel to that coming versus Octopath Traveler 3. So I actually think, I think both will happen eventually. Like, and I don't see a reason not to do them. But if there was a world we lived in where we only got one or the other, it actually probably would be Triangle Strategy 2 over Octopath Traveler 3 at that point.
Got it. But I think the last thing I want to mention is Dragon Quest Builders is a great series as well. It's more recent. I absolutely love that game, those first two games. So I can see a third one totally being made and developed as well. So yeah.
Not only that too, but also like we're also so used to seeing like Dragon Quest spin-offs as well. So I'm curious if they're going to do more Dragon Quest spin-offs besides Builders, like if they go back to the Monster series or if they try something different as well.
Oh, that would be so cool, man. And the Monster series, I haven't played them, but they look super dope, actually.
A lot of people in our community actually like those games, so I know I wanted to make sure that they got their representation here. Whereas, Bravely is another series I don't think they go back to after Bravely Default 2 at this point.
Yeah, Default 2 was rough, actually. I think they're kind of done, and I'm glad that they remade Live Alive. That's an interesting transition. So I wonder what Claytech is going to do afterwards.
And we could see another remake like that. Like we could see like Terranigma is still on the Super Nintendo, or they might even go back and do like an older Final Fantasy like as a remake, or they could do like any number of things like that.
Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. But Garrett, imagine if they went back and did Super Mario RPG with the HD2D thing. Man,
we can only dream.
Yeah,
we can only dream.
It'd be
that would be super dope, actually.
Yeah. Good God. Well, there you go. I think that kind of wraps up. Like, did you have anything else to kind of close this conversation out about before for Creative Business Unit 2 before we get to questions, Garrett?
Well, let me tell you. When I told Ryan I would get into the research of Creative Business Unit 2, I didn't know I was going to get into all of this structured mess that they have. But, I'll have a super fun fact for you. You ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready, Garrett. Prepared.
So the leader of Creative Business Unit 2, Yu Miyake, he was an executive officer for Balan Wonderworld.
Yeah, boy.
Just keep that in your heads, that the leader of this Creative Business Unit is somehow involved in this piece of
What,
trash
you
that
mean
is.
this
Oh
masterpiece,
God.
Garrett?
I can't believe you have a physical copy. Why do you have a
I got it for
physical copy,
$5.
right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they had this.
Did they give you $5?
I went to Dollarama, which is actually
A dollar random.
a store here in Canada, and
Uh,
sometimes they have games in bargain bins there. The most common one you actually see when you go there is Titanfall 2. You just see a bajillion copies of Titanfall 2, and they try and sell it for
man,
$1.
that's a good one though.
So I was in there one day and I saw Balan Wonderworld. I was like, well, I can't. I mean, $5, Gary. I mean, $5 is $5. I mean, to own a piece of history right here, and it comes with some goodies because it even comes with Square Enix points. It's also got this ticket to the carnival that you can go to. And speaking of Square Enix stuff, there's like a coupon promotion for a Dragon Quest mobile game in this package for Balan
Yes,
Wonderworld,
Dragon Quest Act.
despite the fact
Yeah.
that this is a different game that was not from the same studio. So there you go, Balan Wonderworld. Look at that! Look how fancy that is, Balan Wonderworld.
If you look at the animations, actually I played the demo of that game. If you look at the animations, it is Dragon Quest level quality animations. They definitely had some involvement
Yeah,
with this
they definitely
game.
did.
Oh, it's so rough.
Yeah,
I'm good.
yeah.
I'm good. Yes.
But I will tell you something, Garrett. I may own a physical copy of Balan Wonderworld, but I don't own a physical copy of Babylon's Fall. Just take that information how you will. At that point,
Good.
at least have some standards, Garrett.
Yes,
But we'll
definitely.
See. Yeah.
The game that got delisted.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Garrett, I think it's time to let some of our friends into the cave with us. It is time to party up. We're going to start with Sean Capri, who is apparently out there getting eaten by face huggers in the water because he's playing Alien Isolation at the moment.
My gosh.
Sean Capri says, "Hi guys, can we start things off on a serious note and discuss the best waifus and husbandos in games from Creative Business Unit 2? And why is it a tie between attractive female lead 4 and jock male supporting character 3? So, Garrett, do you have a favorite husbando and waifu? Actually, while you think, I have a couple. They're both actually from the same game, believe it or not. Because I was trying to branch out a bit, a little bit, but ultimately of their games, it's just one of those things where I don't play a lot of Dragon Quest stuff, so I'm just personally less familiar with the Dragon Quest characters, and just more, knowledgeable about the Bravely Default games and Octopath stuff. So I went with the best husbando is actually Therian from Octopath Traveler. He's like the thief character, and I like kind of his backstory and stuff like that. He's like a very suave dude with like with a kind of a sad past. So I kind of like his. I think he's like the best husbando for the Creative Business Unit 2, and same game, Primrose the dancer. I actually like Primrose a lot. I actually think she's one of my favorite characters across the Octopath Traveler games, and she is definitely a top waifu, I have to say.
Nice.
Garrett, what about you? What's your picks? Is it attractive female lead 4 and jock male supporting character 3, or someone else?
Actually, it's I've been playing some Octopath Traveler too.
Yeah, you have.
I absolutely adore that game so much. It's such a I don't know what they did from the previous game to this game, but the writing is like just so much better, like skyrocketed. But one of the characters, Husbando, is Oswald. He is a professor, and he's been framed for doing some crimes. I'm not gonna spoil stuff because I think his backstories are very, very cool. Yeah, he has this reserved darkness to him. He's very tactical, very thoughtful about his actions, and he has very powerful magic, and that's why I like Oswald.
Okay.
Very much, very good husbando. With the waifu, I'll just throw in with Octopath Traveler 2. I think is it Throne, the thief?
Yeah.
Yes. I love her origin story a lot, and she has a great personality behind her, and she just, takes her own independence, when she goes onto a journey. I love it so much. She is very, very awesome.
Yeah.
But also, I played a little bit of Dragon Quest 11. Jade is pretty cool. Jade is the martial artist in Dragon Quest 11. She's super dope. So yeah, there you go,
Nice.
Sean.
There you go.
There's some
Waifus and
characters for you.
Hunspondas. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, next up we got Nagachaka, who asks, as someone who has never played a single Dragon Quest or Bravely Default game, tell me why I should give these franchises a try, and if you could only pick one from each series, which one would you recommend? So again, I don't think, like, Garret and I have only dabbled in Dragon Quest, but we're not, neither of us are Dragon Quest people. So like, it's hard, I think, for us to recommend it. Otherwise, like, if you want to play a Dragon Quest game, despite what the community says in our Discord, I actually think you should play Dragon Quest 11. I think is probably the best place to start, rather than going back to some of the old games, at least until 3 HD remake comes out. I think that's probably your best bet. But Garrett, do you disagree with that?
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I would say, if we're counting side games, I would totally just play Dragon Quest Builders too, because it's so good. But yeah, if I choose mainline games, Bravely Default has it's good. It's classical gameplay. It has a unique battle system, but it has its pacing issues.
Yeah.
It definitely has its flaws, especially with the first game with a lot of grinding in the late game. Bravely Default 2 is just, it kind of falls off, with the art style and the pacing. I would agree with Ryan. Like, try out Dragon Quest 11, see if you like it. You can actually play a demo of Dragon Quest 11. I think the first 3 hours.
No, it's more than that. It's the first like 12
it's
hours.
More than
and all your progress carries over. So you just continue playing from there if you like it.
Just play Dragon Quest 11.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best option, because to your point, Garrett, I just think the Bravely Default games are actually harder to go back to. Like, they were games that at the time were really just refreshing, because we weren't really getting a lot of turn-based games coming out at the time that was coming out. Like Square Enix really had abandoned turn-based games at the time that, Bravely Default was coming out. And it was really like an ode to old Final Fantasy games in a lot of ways that we weren't seeing from other games. So that's why, like, a lot of us at the time were really kind of all in on Bravely Default, despite the problems that you outlined, Garrett, where even though, there was those problems with the games, many of us at the time overlooked it just because we didn't have, like, it was the first time in a long time we were playing a brand new turn-based RPG. And now, of course, we're getting the competition is way higher now for turn-based RPGs, where we're getting so many new ones now, even from Square Enix, let alone other companies. Like, just playing all the Square Enix ones is a lot. Yeah. So
the indie games are crazy out there too. So yeah.
So I think it's just a different era for Bravely Default, where I do think those games, again, had a time and a place. I don't think that it's now, although again, I don't think the first Bravely Default's too bad. I actually kind of like that game a lot.
I like that game a lot.
And the combat system is very reminiscent of Octopath Traveler's combat system. So if you've played Octopath and you like the way that game plays, then I actually think you'll probably actually like Bravely Default, despite the grinding and pacing issues we talked about in the late game.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Next up, and this one sparked the controversy in the Discord, the Muffinmon says, what is the most JRPG in the last 10 years, and why is it Dragon Quest 11? Well, I mean, that's not the answer, because the correct answer to that question is Bloodborne. Bloodborne is the most overrated RPG made from a Japanese company in the last 10 years. You heard it here from the King of Hot Takes. I mean, to be fair, most people who have listened to, because we had that Hot Takes episode, Garrett, where I said something very similar. I just don't like Bloodborne as much as nearly as much as other people like it. So I actually kid about that. I actually think Bloodborne's probably a good game. Definitely not the most overrated RPG, but it's also the one where I'm just like, I just don't like Bloodborne. So I'm just not personally into it.
That is an interesting take, because I hear a lot of people that got into Dark Souls series, like Bloodborne was like their game, and they're like, oh, it's the best game ever. Oh, it's the best PlayStation exclusive of all time. That type of mentality. So interested to hear that from you.
Well, especially like when you say overrated. Overrated doesn't mean bad, or doesn't mean it's a terrible game. It actually a lot of times might still be a great game. But is it the best PlayStation game of all time? I personally don't think so. But that's just my take on the situation.
Okay, I see. You know what, Kevin? You have hot takes. I see you in the Discord and the Twitters. You hate on Fire Emblem Engage. I don't know if I can trust you much anymore. So I don't know about this overrated JRPG with Dragon Quest 11. You know, Dragon Quest 11, I think it has its fans.
Yeah.
And I think it's popular. It's because it's a legacy franchise.
Well, you have to
And I think
remember, Dragon Quest 11 is basically just an NES game that with prettier
it
graphics
really is.
in a lot
It
of
really
ways.
is.
So that's
You can see
not going to appeal to everybody.
exactly. You can see the audience on average older than like the rest of the gaming crowd. Like no joke. Like the people I know that are really into this game, it's like the people who love the Dragon Quest series.
Yeah.
So I think it's fine for where it is. It's funny because I see other people that love the Dragon Quest series absolutely like cannot stand the end of this game. It really is the end of this game that's downright so long. Like it's it's about as long as Persona 5, but Persona 5 is like kind of fun at
Right.
the end, you know? It's like a build up really to the end, whereas this one it kind of just does some I hear it just does some weird things at
Yeah.
the end. And it's just like why are we repeating this game over and over and over? Like that type of mentality. So, yeah, it definitely has its ups and downs, but I think for Dragon Quest fans is mostly overall pretty good
Yeah.
for them. Yeah.
All right. Last question of the week comes to us from Skycatcher Gaming, who asks, "Is Dragon Quest gritty? What is the grittiest game in the Dragon Quest series? If not, what game should I play if I want a Dragon Quest but grittier?" So, if you're talking about gritty games as from the perspective of like a more mature style, or like more of a like darker style game or something like that, that's not the Dragon Quest games at all. Like they're very much kind of like Atelier games in a way, where they're kind of like more happy-go-lucky kind of games. Like obviously there's still evil and danger, and like there's dark and sinister forces that happen in Dragon Quest games, but they're not like they're not like you didn't really have like depressing moments or a lot of like there's not a lot of grittiness in the same way as you see with a lot of more mature rated games or teen rated games, because because Dragon Quest in a way is a series that is more aimed at younger people. Like it's not so much aimed as being the gritty and mature series that Final Fantasy kind of is, like because Final Fantasy kind of became the gritty version of Dragon Quest in a lot of ways. But
Yeah, I think Dragon Quest just has its own style, and his own style is definitely cartoonish. Going dating back to like, the original Dragon Quest and Dragon Warrior, you can see that from the art style. It's for as Ryan said, for a younger audience, which is kind of weird because now it's an older audience.
Yeah, which is just
I think
funny because they're the people that grew up with it. But when you again, you don't really have to look any further from comparing the art style that you see in this game versus the art style you see in Chrono Trigger, both done by Akira Toriyama, so the same artist for both games. But seeing like even how the characters that are designed for Dragon Quest, when you compare the characters and how they're designed for Chrono Trigger, big difference as far as like the audiences that those characters are very much designed for, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say like from a surface, Dragon Quest 11 is like pretty light and happy-go-lucky, but I hear later on in the game it gets pretty dark in terms of just themes
Right.
at near the end. But you really gotta dig deep. You're not gonna find it in the first third of the game, per se. It's
and again, it's not like the majority of the game. It's not like Final Fantasy VII where you're bombing buildings to rescue the planet from big corporations and stuff like that, and then you see like key characters die in the first like 5 hours of the game. Like it's nothing like that or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't know what other series that could be comparable, but like I don't know, check out Final Fantasy VII Remake, I guess.
There's that, or I would say the one I would actually say, if you want an experience like Dragon Quest that's grittier, Persona. Because Persona, turn-based,
definitely.
very much inspired by Dragon Quest in a lot of ways with the way that game plays. Like it's a little bit faster. As far as the gameplay style, you move through the game at a quicker pace, but obviously, the games are just as long as each other because, they're both, 100-hour experiences when you compare Persona 5 and Dragon Quest 11. Like, in a lot of ways, like I would have normally said, like if Final Fantasy continued to do the turn-based thing, like maybe the newest Final Fantasy game would be kind of where I would say you would want a Dragon Quest but grittier. But if you want the Dragon Quest formula but a grittier version of that, I actually think Persona is probably the series you look at for that.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree.
Cool.
I think that's it, man.
Yeah, I think that's it for questions. But before we go, Garrett, real quick before I do your outro plugs, did you see what surfaced last night? Did you see the quick snippet of gameplay from Persona 3 Remake come out last night?
I did.
I saw it too. It looks so good.
That looks legit. Like, no joke. That doesn't look fake. And there's been people going back and forth with this. And there's like, oh, it's fake. Oh, it's real. It's like, come on, guys. You saw the video. Like, that.
I actually think the Jet Set Radio part that you see at the end of that footage, I think is what actually seals the deal for me that it is actually real.
Okay.
Because of how that looks. Where that definitely does not look photoshopped or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I had to throw that in here because we were just talking about Persona 3 and it was on my mind, Garrett. It looks so good, though. I can't wait for that game.
I have, I put some stuff on the RPG Cave Discord channel as well. It's like, I saw one account tweeting about metadata about Japanese data, like in Japanese characters, and definitely putting Persona 3 Remake .jp in there. And it's like,
yeah, because the website exists, like the domain's there. So, yeah.
I think they have something coming up, don't they? They have
a Persona concert coming up soon.
Yeah, Persona concert.
And they actually tend to announce things like game-related stuff at Persona concerts. That's where they announce that the Persona soap or the Persona toothpaste and other Persona accessories that you can buy in Japan that have nothing to do with the games. But that's also where they usually announce new games, is actually at the Persona concerts. So we might actually see that there.
And then I think I've heard some rumors about Shin Megami Tensei 4.
Yep.
Your 4 complete. That could be a thing as well.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, we'll see. Yeah. And then, we still know, we talked about it on the Rumor Mill episode, but like Shin Megami Tensei 5 for PC is still a thing that's out there in the ether that we know is out there. So who knows? But anyways, I think we're wrapping things up here, Garrett. But before we go, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me at Twitter at Bland Explosion. And by the way, thank you guys for all your support on Twitter. I just hit 700 followers.
Woo!
So,
that's
yay! Exciting. Yeah, a whole number. It's great.
A whole number, as opposed to there's no fractions in there or decimals.
There's no decimals. There's no imaginary people. There's no eyes in there. So at least that's good.
Also, I'm going to throw it out there, Garrett. Since you're talking about round numbers, I have 420 followers at this moment, and I don't ever need any followers ever again. As long as that number doesn't go down.
Don't follow at Ryan Turford, okay?
Yeah.
It's okay.
Just don't only follow me if you see that number go down to 419 or 418. Because 420, that's where it's at, Garrett.
That's where it's at. And then I'm active on the Discord. I want to see your shenanigans on the RPG Cave channel. I hear Pokemon games getting burned. I hear other things going on. Like people have their hot takes left and right in there. So thank you
it's a safe space.
So much.
So like anyone, like hot takes are welcome there. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 15 is just okay.
I don't think that's a hot take, Garrett. I think most people.
Oh, okay. Dang it.
Or most. In fact, you might actually be higher on that game than most people are, because most people don't think that game is very good. So, as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford if you want to at least look at my follower count and don't see it actually going up at all. You can also find us on Twitter at Carpool Gaming, right here at YouTube at youtube.com/carpoolgaming, and of course on podcast services around the globe. So. For Garrett Bland, I am Ryan Turford. This has been the 90th level of the RPG Cave. Only 9 more levels until level 99. And we're out.
Bye-bye.